In the heart of Asia, two nations are drawing closer with a sense of urgency and purpose that is reshaping the balance of power. China and Pakistan, once allies of necessity, are now becoming strategic partners with a vision that extends beyond borders. This partnership, quietly forged over decades, is not simply a regional alliance. It is a calculated geopolitical maneuver with global consequences. As the United States pivots toward the Indo-Pacific, India strengthens its defense networks, and Russia struggles with its war in Europe, the emergence of a China-Pakistan axis represents a critical development in the 21st century struggle for influence. The relationship between China and Pakistan is not new, but its depth and direction have evolved drastically. Unlike traditional alliances, this one is not based on shared ideology or religious affinity. It is instead built on common threats, converging strategic interests, and the persistent presence of a shared rival, India. The foundation of this alliance was laid in the aftermath of the 1962 Sino-Indian War. At that time, China saw in Pakistan a partner who could help contain India's ambitions, especially as India was receiving military and diplomatic support from both the United States and the Soviet Union in the Cold War era. For Pakistan, the growing hostility with India after the partition and the wars of 1947 and 1965 made China a natural choice for balance. The old proverb, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," held true, and it gave birth to one of the world's most enduring but under-discussed strategic partnerships. In 1963, Pakistan and China signed a boundary agreement that ceded the Shaksgam Valley, part of Kashmir under Pakistani control, to China. This single move, criticized heavily by India, signaled a tectonic shift. It showed that Pakistan was willing to make territorial compromises to bring China closer. In response, China began a steady flow of military aid, weapons transfers, and diplomatic support to Islamabad. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, this cooperation deepened, with China helping Pakistan develop missiles, tanks, and aircraft that would later form the backbone of its armed forces. While the U.S. also supported Pakistan during the Soviet-Afghan War, it was China that offered consistent backing with fewer political strings attached. This all, whether friendship, as leaders from both sides often describe it, is more than a diplomatic slogan. It has survived regime changes, global shifts, sanctions, and wars. During moments when Pakistan was internationally isolated, whether due to its nuclear tests in 1998, its support for the Taliban in the 1990s, or its tense relations with the U.S. After the Bin Laden raid, China remained steadfast. It has shielded Pakistan from UN sanctions, provided economic lifelines, and blocked international motions that could have further cornered Islamabad. But the relationship has also evolved. Today, it is no longer simply a balancing act against India. It has become a strategic axis with ambitions to shape regional trade, military posture, and power projection. What makes this alliance so significant now is not just its historical durability, but its modern evolution. China no longer sees Pakistan solely as a buffer against India. It views Pakistan as a gateway, both literally and strategically, to its wider global agenda. With the launch of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor (CPEC) under the Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing has locked itself into a long-term, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure commitment. CPEC offers China access to the Arabian Sea via Gwadar port, bypassing the Strait of Malacca, a choke point vulnerable to U.S. naval dominance. In return, Pakistan receives highways, power plants, rail links, and jobs, though not without criticism and debt concerns. Simultaneously, the military dimension of the alliance has expanded dramatically. Pakistan now operates Chinese-built drones, tanks, submarines, and fighter jets like the JF-17, co-developed with Chinese assistance. Joint military drills, intelligence exchanges, and high-level defense meetings have become routine. As China continues to assert itself in the South China Sea and beyond, Pakistan's strategic geography gives it influence across the Arabian Sea, Persian Gulf, and into Central Asia. Together, the two nations are crafting a silent alliance, an axis defined not by public declarations, but by coordinated movements, shared threats, and parallel ambitions. In an era where alliances are increasingly fluid and temporary, the China-Pakistan axis stands out as one of the most consistent and intensifying. It represents a fusion of hard military power, economic interdependence, and diplomatic alignment. And while some observers argue this bond is more tactical than strategic, the sheer scale of cooperation between these two nuclear-armed nations cannot be ignored. Whether it evolves into a formal alliance or remains an informal but robust partnership, it will continue to shape the future of South Asia, and perhaps tilt the global balance of power in ways we are only beginning to understand. At the heart of the China-Pakistan alliance lies a vast, multi-billion-dollar project that has reshaped both countries' strategic calculations, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. Launched in 2015 as the flagship component of China's Global Belt and Road Initiative, CPEC is far more than just an infrastructure investment plan. It is a geopolitical corridor of power designed to bind Pakistan's future to China's strategic interests while offering Beijing a crucial alternative route to the Persian Gulf. For China, CPEC is a gateway. For Pakistan, it is a lifeline. For the region, it is a game changer. Spanning over 3,000 kilometers, CPEC connects the western Chinese city of Kashgar to the deep sea port of Gwadar in Pakistan's Balochistan province. Along this route, highways are being carved through treacherous mountain passes, power plants are being built to address Pakistan's chronic electricity shortages, and fiber optic cables are being laid to enhance communication. Rail networks, special economic zones, and logistical hubs are all part of the design. But beyond the roads and ports, there's something deeper at work, a strategic integration that ties Pakistan's economy, politics, and even its internal security more tightly to China's long-term vision. From China's perspective, CPEC is a strategic masterstroke. Nearly 80% of China's oil imports pass through the Strait of Malacca, a narrow waterway between Malaysia and Indonesia, heavily patrolled by the U.S. Navy in any potential conflict, be it over Taiwan or the South China Sea. That route could be blocked, choking China's energy supply. By developing Gwadar, China gains direct access to the Arabian Sea, allowing it to ship energy and goods overland through Pakistan into western China. This shortens shipping time, reduces dependency on vulnerable sea lanes, and gives Beijing a military foothold in a region where it previously had none. For Pakistan, the benefits are equally transformative, if at least on the surface. The country has long struggled with energy shortages, underdeveloped infrastructure, and weak industrial output. CPEC promises to deliver over $60 billion in investments, primarily in energy and transport. Coal, hydro, solar, and wind power plants are under construction, helping to stabilize Pakistan's erratic power grid. New highways like the Karakoram Highway and motorways linking major cities promise to increase connectivity and trade. Industrial zones near Gwadar and other urban centers are intended to attract manufacturing, creating jobs in a country with high unemployment and a youthful population desperate for opportunity. But the corridor has not been without controversy. Critics within Pakistan argue that CPEC risks turning the country into an economic satellite of China. Much of the labor and materials for these projects come from Chinese firms, and the loans fueling them have raised alarm about long-term debt sustainability. Some fear Pakistan could fall into a debt trap, similar to what happened in Sri Lanka, where failure to repay Chinese loans led to China gaining control of the strategic Hambantota port. Moreover, the lack of transparency in many of the agreements has fueled domestic suspicion, particularly among smaller provinces like Balochistan, where locals often feel marginalized and excluded from the benefits. Balochistan itself has become a flashpoint in the CPEC narrative. The region is home to Gwadar Port, arguably the crown jewel of the project, but also to a simmering separatist insurgency. Bloc rebels view CPEC as a form of neo-colonial exploitation, claiming that the province's resources are being siphoned off without benefiting local populations. Attacks on Chinese workers, convoys, and infrastructure have grown in recent years, forcing Pakistan to deploy thousands of troops just to protect CPEC routes and personnel. For China, this internal instability is a serious concern. But it has also opened the door for greater Chinese security involvement on Pakistani soil, something that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. The militarization of CPEC is not just a defensive measure. As the economic corridor has expanded, China's naval and intelligence presence in the region has quietly grown. Satellite imagery and intelligence reports suggest that Gwadar is being slowly dual-purposed not just as a commercial port, but as a potential naval base. If this continues, China would gain its first permanent military outpost in the Arabian Sea, just a few hundred miles from the Strait of Hormuz and the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. This would radically alter the regional naval balance and make CPEC not just an economic artery, but a strategic conduit for Chinese power projection. Despite the risks, both countries are committed to pushing CPEC forward. For China, the corridor serves multiple goals: securing energy supply chains, expanding global trade influence, and gaining military reach. For Pakistan, it offers development, investment, and the prestige of being a key player in China's rise. The deepening economic bond created by CPEC is not just about roads and ports, it is about rewriting the map of South Asia. Whether this corridor becomes a bridge to prosperity or a trigger for future conflict depends not just on economics, but on the ambitions and anxieties of two nations determined to shape their future outside of Western control. While economic ties between China and Pakistan have gained much of the spotlight in recent years, it is in the military domain that their alliance reveals its most potent and unsettling dimension. The China-Pakistan military partnership is not just a matter of weapons sales or training exchanges. It is a calibrated and evolving synergy designed to challenge regional adversaries, particularly India, and to create an integrated axis of military cooperation that extends across land, sea, air, cyber, and space. It is a quiet but deliberate fusion of two armies with complementary needs and shared strategic visions, one supplying technology, the other offering geography and operational experience. China has long been the largest supplier of military equipment to Pakistan. Over the decades, this has included tanks, fighter jets, drones, radar systems, naval ships, and missile technology. While countries like the United States have wavered in their support, often conditioning arms sales on political reforms or counterterrorism cooperation, China has taken a very different approach. Strategic consistency with minimal interference. This has made Beijing an indispensable partner to Islamabad's defense establishment. In return, China has gained a loyal ally in South Asia that is ready to support its interests diplomatically and provide forward positioning opportunities should future regional conflicts erupt. One of the most visible signs of this collaboration is the co-development of the JF-17 Thunder fighter jet. Built by Pakistan's aeronautical complex in Camera and China's Chengdu Aircraft Corporation, the JF-17 is a symbol of the maturing technological bond between the two countries. It gives Pakistan a relatively advanced, low-cost, multi-role aircraft to modernize its aging air force, while China benefits from defense exports and joint production capabilities. These aircraft have been used in combat situations and continue to evolve with newer variants and upgraded avionics, some reportedly integrating Chinese ESA radar and electronic warfare systems. Beyond air power, the naval cooperation between the two countries has seen unprecedented growth. China has supplied Pakistan with several warships, including Advanced Type 054A frigates equipped with modern surface-to-air missiles and anti-submarine warfare capabilities. These ships significantly enhance Pakistan's naval reach in the Arabian Sea, particularly around Gwadar, and help protect maritime infrastructure along the CPEC corridor. Additionally, Pakistan is acquiring Chinese-built submarines under the Hangar-class project, which will provide the Pakistan Navy with a new generation of undersea warfare capability that may include air-independent propulsion systems, a major leap in stealth and endurance. On land, Chinese defense manufacturers have provided Pakistan with modern main battle tanks, such as the VT-4 and long-range artillery systems. These additions bolster Pakistan's armored divisions, especially in its eastern military posture facing India. Joint military exercises have also become routine, including Warrior and Shaheen series drills that simulate joint operations in mountainous terrain and high-altitude warfare. These exercises not only build interoperability between the two armies, but also send a clear message to regional observers. This is not just a transactional relationship, it is a functional military partnership. The intelligence sharing dimension is harder to track, but no less important. Reports suggest that China and Pakistan have developed cooperation in electronic surveillance, counterterrorism intelligence, and satellite reconnaissance. Some analysts believe Chinese satellite assets are being used to assist Pakistani forces in border surveillance and targeting operations. Additionally, China is believed to have helped Pakistan develop and secure its nuclear program, especially in the early years, providing designs and technical expertise that laid the foundation for Pakistan's current arsenal. This collaboration is not without its strategic intent. Both nations view India as a central threat to their security and ambitions. India's military modernization, its growing partnership with the United States, and its expanding naval presence in the Indian Ocean have only increased the urgency with which China and Pakistan coordinate. For China, Pakistan serves as a counterbalance to India's influence in South Asia. For Pakistan, China provides a technological and diplomatic umbrella that shields it from international pressure and levels the playing field against a larger, wealthier adversary. But the alliance is also expanding into less conventional domains. Cyber warfare, for example, is an area of growing concern. Both countries have reportedly invested in offensive cyber capabilities, targeting rival military and civilian infrastructures. There is also increasing speculation about joint cooperation in space surveillance, with Pakistan expressing interest in China's satellite navigation system, Beidou, and launching its own satellites. With Chinese assistance, these moves suggest that the military alliance is no longer limited to conventional deterrence. It is evolving into a multi-domain partnership with long-term strategic depth. As tensions continue to rise in Asia, the China-Pakistan military axis will only grow in importance. It represents a convergence of hard power and political will that could reshape conflict dynamics in the region. Unlike formal military alliances like NATO, the China-Pakistan partnership thrives in ambiguity, quiet, consistent, and dangerously underestimated. In the next major conflict in Asia, whether on the Himalayan border, in the Strait of Hormuz, or across the South China Sea, this axis may not just play a supporting role. It could be at the very center of the storm. India is watching the tightening China-Pakistan axis with increasing anxiety and strategic urgency. For decades, New Delhi has had to navigate its troubled relationship with Islamabad, a dynamic defined by wars, cross-border terrorism, and decades of mistrust. But the growing depth of China's military, economic, and geopolitical partnership with Pakistan has introduced a new layer of complexity, one that turns a two-dimensional rivalry into a multi-front strategic challenge. For Indian defense planners, the nightmare scenario is no longer just another flare-up along the line of control. It is a coordinated threat from two nuclear-armed adversaries working in tandem, exploiting India's geography, resources, and military posture from both east and west. The fear of a two-front war is no longer theoretical. It has become a central planning doctrine within India's military establishment. Over the past 5 years, India has overhauled its threat assessments to account for the possibility that hostilities with Pakistan in the West could be supported, synchronized, or even instigated by Chinese pressure along the eastern frontier in Ladakh or Arunachal Pradesh. The 2020 Galwan Valley clash between Indian and Chinese troops, which resulted in casualties on both sides for the first time in decades, shocked the Indian public and exposed the fragility of de facto Himalayan border. The possibility that China could launch or escalate hostilities in coordination with Pakistani operations is now taken seriously at the highest levels of the Indian government. India's strategic community sees the China-Pakistan axis as a force multiplier that could stretch its armed forces thin across multiple domains. The sheer size of India's borders with these two nations, coupled with the difficult terrain, demands significant manpower and logistical coordination. If Pakistan were to initiate hostilities in Kashmir, while China activated pressure in Ladakh or Sikkim, India would be forced to split its already overstretched military resources. Even if such coordination were not simultaneous, the psychological and tactical leverage it gives China and Pakistan could serve as a powerful deterrent to any Indian response. This is especially true in the context of short-duration, high-intensity conflicts that could achieve political objectives before the international community can react. In response, India has begun shifting its military doctrine and capabilities. One major step has been the restructuring of its armed forces under the theater command model, designed to unify command structures and improve joint operations between the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The creation of the Integrated Defense Staff and the appointment of a Chief of Defense Staff have accelerated this process, signaling India's move toward a modern war fighting structure more capable of handling complex, multi-front scenarios. Modernization of military hardware has also accelerated. India has signed multiple defense deals to acquire high-tech platforms, including Rafale fighter jets from France, Apache helicopters from the U.S., S-400 air defense systems from Russia, and indigenously built missiles like the BrahMos. The Indian Navy is expanding its blue water capabilities to counter Chinese maritime encroachment in the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, India has deepened its strategic ties with the United States, Japan, and Australia through the Quad Alliance, an informal grouping aimed at balancing Chinese influence across the Indo-Pacific. The intelligence community in India is also deeply concerned about the strategic depth that CPEC and Gwadar Port provide to China and Pakistan. The fear is that China could eventually militarize Gwadar, using it as a logistical base for its navy and gaining access to the Arabian Sea, a region traditionally dominated by the Indian Navy. This would effectively turn Pakistan into an extension of China's power projection strategy and challenge India's control of vital sea lanes in the Indian Ocean region, IR. As a result, India has boosted its presence in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and increased surveillance across the Indian Ocean with the support of U.S. intelligence and reconnaissance platforms. But India's concerns are not just about military maneuvers or economic projects. They also extend into the realm of perception warfare. Chinese media and Pakistani outlets often coordinate narratives that portray India as an aggressor or destabilizing force in the region. Cyber operations, disinformation campaigns, and digital surveillance are increasingly used to shape regional and global opinions about India's actions, especially in sensitive areas like Kashmir or the northeastern border states. India has responded by enhancing its cyber warfare capabilities and creating new departments to combat digital propaganda and online influence operations. Despite these measures, the strategic challenge posed by the China-Pakistan axis is long-term and structural. It is not simply a question of deterring a sudden attack or securing a vulnerable border. It is about competing with an emerging alliance that combines military power, economic leverage, diplomatic coordination, and long-term strategic planning. India may not face an overt war tomorrow, but the constant pressure of being flanked by two nuclear neighbors with growing interoperability means that India must remain in a state of constant readiness. This sustained strain has far-reaching implications for defense spending, regional diplomacy, and internal cohesion. For New Delhi, the coming decade will be defined by its ability to deter, manage, and, if necessary, defeat threats from both its western and eastern neighbors. The China-Pakistan axis is not just a bilateral concern for India. It is a new axis of competition in Asia's evolving security architecture. And as tensions continue to rise across the region, India knows it can no longer afford to prepare for yesterday's wars. It must plan for the alliance of tomorrow. China's alliance with Pakistan is more than just a regional balancing act. It is a key pillar in Beijing's broader vision of global power projection. As China moves from a continental power to a full-spectrum geopolitical force, its partnerships, especially with countries like Pakistan, are crafted not just for short-term leverage, but for long-term influence in shaping the 21st century world order. The China-Pakistan axis, though often understated on the world stage, fits neatly into Beijing's playbook for countering U.S. influence, encircling India, and reshaping Asia's security architecture in its favor. What may appear to be a bilateral friendship is, in reality, part of a deliberate and wide-ranging global strategy. At the heart of this strategy lies the Belt and Road Initiative BRI, a vast and ambitious infrastructure campaign that spans more than 60 countries across Asia, Africa, and Europe. While BRI is often marketed as an economic opportunity, its true power lies in its ability to create dependencies, secure logistical routes, and open new military pathways for China. Pakistan's central role in this initiative through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor gives Beijing an anchor point in South Asia. This is not just about moving goods more efficiently, it's about securing geostrategic access to warm water ports, bypassing vulnerable choke points like the Strait of Malacca, and ensuring Chinese naval presence deep in the Indian Ocean. Gwadar Port, the southern terminus of CPEC, is one of the most significant assets in China's maritime expansion plan. Though officially a commercial hub, Gwadar's development includes security zones, restricted areas, and infrastructure with clear dual-use potential. The port's location just outside the Strait of Hormuz, through which over a fifth of the world's oil supply flows, gives China an observation and potential control point near the Persian Gulf. It also provides a staging ground for logistics and resupply for Chinese naval vessels operating far from home ports. Over time, Gwadar could evolve into a forward operating base for China's Navy, similar to its facility in Djibouti on the Horn of Africa. If that happens, Beijing would possess a string of bases stretching from the South China Sea to the Arabian Sea, a maritime arc of influence challenging Western dominance in critical sea lanes. Beyond the physical infrastructure, China is embedding itself in Pakistan's defense and intelligence architecture. Joint training exercises, co-production of military platforms, and satellite cooperation are all growing indicators that the two nations are syncing their security outlooks. There is a strategic calculus here. By drawing Pakistan closer, China ensures a permanent security foothold near India's western flank, turning Pakistan into both a shield and a sword, defensive in posture, but offensive in potential. This arrangement allows China to apply indirect pressure on India without directly escalating into full-blown confrontation. In essence, Pakistan becomes China's strategic proxy in South Asia. These developments are not going unnoticed. The United States, already engaged in a long-term rivalry with China, views the China-Pakistan alliance as a potential flashpoint in an already crowded theater of competition. Washington has responded by deepening its defense and economic cooperation with India, strengthening the Quad alliance with Japan and Australia, and expanding its military footprint in the Indo-Pacific. The China-Pakistan axis, therefore, is not simply a regional concern. It is now embedded in the broader architecture of global rivalries. As China rises, alliances are forming in response, and the axis with Pakistan has placed South Asia firmly within the contours of the new Cold War. But China's strategy is not just military or economic, it's psychological. The image of unwavering partnership with Pakistan sends a signal to other smaller nations: align with Beijing and you gain protection, investment, and leverage. For countries in Central Asia, Africa, and Southeast Asia, the China-Pakistan relationship is a model of how to break dependence on Western institutions and instead rely on a rising superpower that offers infrastructure over ideology and cash over conditions. In this sense, Pakistan is not just an ally. It is a prototype of China's client-state strategy. There are risks, of course. Pakistan's domestic instability, economic volatility, and insurgencies, especially in Balochistan, make it a fragile partner. Beijing's heavy investments in such a volatile environment could backfire if the region descends into chaos. Additionally, the growing militarization of CPEC has increased tensions with local populations and added fuel to separatist movements. If violence escalates, China may be forced to deploy private security firms or even military personnel to protect its assets, which would mark a dramatic shift in how Beijing projects force abroad. Despite these dangers, China seems willing to absorb the risks. The long-term rewards, a loyal partner, strategic depth, access to the Arabian Sea, and influence across the Islamic world far outweigh the costs in Beijing's calculations. The China-Pakistan axis, therefore, is not just a geopolitical experiment. It is a blueprint for how China plans to build the alliances of tomorrow, through infrastructure, military integration, and ideological alignment framed around sovereignty, mutual respect, and shared opposition to Western dominance. In this evolving world order, the China-Pakistan partnership may not carry the official title of an alliance, but it functions like one. It reflects the new face of global conflict, where infrastructure doubles as influence, where ports can host warships, and where economic corridors can become strategic arteries for the projection of power. As this axis strengthens, it not only shifts the balance in Asia, but also challenges the very foundations of the post-Cold War global order. The world is watching, and India, the United States, and the wider West are already adjusting their strategies because the China-Pakistan axis is no longer emerging. It's already here. As the alliance between China and Pakistan matures, it is no longer simply about mutual benefit or regional convenience. It is a structural shift that reverberates far beyond South Asia. The partnership is becoming a cornerstone in the evolving balance of global power, a sign that the unipolar moment of U.S. dominance is drawing to a close, and that the world is re-entering a new age of strategic blocs, great power rivalries, and high-stakes diplomacy. What began as a tactical alignment in the Cold War era has now transformed into a strategic axis with global consequences. The China-Pakistan relationship is no longer just a bilateral friendship. It is a symbol of the emerging multipolar order, one where old alliances are tested and new ones redefine the battlefield. At the center of this axis is a shared vision, a rejection of Western primacy and a commitment to carving out sovereign space in a world long dominated by U.S.-led institutions and narratives. For China, this means expanding its influence through infrastructure, technology, and military soft power, while for Pakistan, it provides a shield against international isolation, financial collapse, and regional encirclement by India. The synergy is clear. Pakistan offers geographic access, strategic depth, and a pliable partner. China brings investment, protection at global forums, and advanced military technology. Together, they form a bulwark against the Western-led international order. The wider implications of this alliance are already being felt across Asia and beyond. In Central Asia, nations aligned with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are increasingly watching how China uses its relationship with Pakistan to build leverage across borders. In the Gulf, Chinese inroads into ports, oil fields, and digital infrastructure are often supported by intelligence sharing and military agreements, many of which are tested and modeled in Pakistan. First, even in Africa, where Chinese influence is growing rapidly, the China-Pakistan alliance is viewed as a framework for how Beijing might build military-friendly relationships that support its Belt and Road ambitions. From Gwadar to Djibouti, China is building not just ports, but a chain of strategic nodes that stretch across continents. But while the axis is growing, so too is resistance. India has dramatically increased its defense spending, intensified its military cooperation with the United States, and pushed for regional leadership among Southeast Asian states wary of Chinese expansion. The United States has elevated India as a key pillar of its Indo-Pacific strategy, placing New Delhi at the heart of efforts to contain Chinese influence in both military and economic domains. Joint naval patrols, intelligence sharing, and satellite surveillance have increased between the Quad nations, India, Japan, Australia, and the U.S., with clear attention on Chinese, Pakistani activity. In the Indian Ocean and along contested borders, the risks of escalation are real. One miscalculation in Kashmir, one border skirmish between Chinese and Indian troops in Ladakh, or one maritime incident in the Arabian Sea could ignite a broader confrontation with global consequences. The China-Pakistan axis has increased not only the density of military presence in South Asia, but also the complexity of the region's politics. Unlike during the Cold War, when nuclear deterrence stabilized rivalries, today's conflict zones are influenced by drones, cyber warfare, and asymmetric tactics, making deterrence more fragile and escalation more unpredictable. Another layer of complexity is the economic fragility of Pakistan. While Chinese investment has built highways, ports, and power plants, it has also created dependency. If Pakistan's debt burden continues to rise, and the expected returns from CPEC projects remain unrealized, domestic resentment could grow. Bloc insurgents have already targeted Chinese workers and infrastructure. If unrest escalates, it could draw China into deeper involvement, potentially even military deployment in Pakistan under the guise of protecting its interests. That would be a historic turning point, the first time China commits hard power abroad under a semi-formal alliance framework. For Beijing, the long-term strategy is about legitimacy, not just leverage. It seeks to reshape global norms on sovereignty, development, and governance through partnerships like the one with Pakistan. In this worldview, security comes not from Western-style alliances or democratic values, but from shared interests, mutual respect, and strategic patience. The China-Pakistan axis is the test case for this model. If it succeeds, it could pave the way for similar alignments in Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and Africa, quietly building a counter-system to the liberal international order. For the world, this shift demands attention. The future of conflict may not be decided by massive armies clashing, but by economic corridors, cyber capabilities, proxy forces, and ideological alignment. The China-Pakistan alliance represents all these elements in one. It is subtle, layered, and deeply strategic. As Washington, Brussels, and New Delhi adjust their policies, one thing is clear: ignoring this axis is no longer an option. In the end, the China-Pakistan partnership is not a footnote in world affairs. It is a headline. It may not yet be a military pact on paper, but on the ground, at sea, and in cyberspace, it behaves like one. Whether this axis becomes the foundation of a new Eastern alliance or a flashpoint for future wars will depend on how the rest of the world responds. But one fact remains undeniable: the global chessboard has been reset, and the next moves will shape the century ahead.